Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We've been having a really interesting discussion debate in the break between me and Maqsood and Amjad. The first part, you heard Amjad making some really important parallels to what happened in the 30s in Germany and what happened after that, we know the World War II, in which millions of people lost their lives, including over 400,000 Muslims who suffered death at the hands of the Nazis, and over 6 million Jews who suffered the Holocaust. We are seeing something similar happening in Gaza to the people of Palestine, but we won't go into that. Now, obviously, let me turn to Maqsood. I mean, Maqsood, you heard what Amjad had to say, that there's a parallel. What is happening at the moment is people like Nigel Farage and others are using the opportunity to find somebody to blame for the economic woes of this country, for the fact that the ordinary white working class people are finding themselves in a situation where they can't even go and buy food for some families, can't even heat their homes in some cases. So these are the factors that are affecting people on day-to-day life. And therefore the scapegoat, is the word that Amjad used, is the others being the Muslim community and the other migrants in this country. How do you see this scenario playing up at the moment and the impact of that as we move forward?
I think Amjad Bhai's highlighted some of good points with regards to the parallels, you know, the horrific genocide and Holocaust that took place against the Jewish community. It is now the Muslims who are facing, with regards to the issues of the scapegoating, us, if you want to call that, with regards towards it. But I would slightly differ from what Amjad Bhai said, although I agree with him in the parallel sides of things. I think the conditions now are also as such that we have got people in positions of powerful positions politically.
When you say position of power, who do you describe in positions of power?
Because
we have members of parliament, for example, or a few chief executives maybe in local government or other places. Do you consider those as people in position of power?
Of course I do.
Right.
Because politics is powerful. That's
right.
why people go in to become MPs and MEPs and so forth and councillors. And in fairness, we have got those people in positions of power. We not only got black and brown people in positions of power, we got white people in positions of power. The Keir Starmers and David Lammys and the others, are you with me? The Sajid Javids. So it's not that we don't have people who can relate to immigration. Are you with me in a sense? Keir Starmer is a human rights activist, or used to be a human rights lawyer and so forth. So we got very knowledgeable people in those positions. It's the failure of those very knowledgeable people in those political positions that I think is actually giving rise to people like Nigel Farage and his party, because they're not being challenged. And if you don't challenge extremist behavior by people like Nigel Farage and the others in the Conservative Party and the Labour Party, then this is what happens. Scapegoating will take place.
I mean, the leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch, has also drove into this debate about immigration, hasn't she? I'm sure you're aware of that. So, and then today, the Prime Minister's announced stricter regulations on people coming into this country, again using the immigration sort of banner as a tool to sort of appease, in a way, some people are saying, Nigel Farage and his sort of political people who got of that thinking that it's immigrants who are causing all the problems. So where do members of our community, the Muslim community in particular, who is, in your words, who are in positions of power, where do you think their responsibility is to challenge some of these narratives, some of these misconceptions that other people are now trying to perpetuate?
They have a huge responsibility, not only black and brown MPs, but white MPs. Because if we live in a civilized society, and society that we say we are civilized, that we uphold human rights, then we have to actually put that into practice. We can't say we are for human rights and we are very selective on human rights. We can't say we have freedom of expression, champions of it, but then we're selective on freedom of expression. So this issues about challenging people like Nigel has to come from within the political parties and political leaders who say that they are activists for human rights and so forth, who wants a fair society, who wants a just society. That's not happening. And that's been the danger of democracy.
I mean, this is not an issue about Gaza, for example, but following from your point about human rights and valuing human rights, Keir Starmer, like you said, was a human rights lawyer, so he should be fundamentally a human rights person. But when it comes to Gaza, we saw what he said right at the beginning, for example. Now, do you feel that people are shifting themselves in order to cling on to power? So they're they're changing their narrative to try and survive to the new sort of Britain that people like Nigel Farage and others would like to see.
Absolutely. I think that we have become more selective on equality, inclusion and human rights. We select which group we want to support, which groups we don't want to support, which group we feel we can relate to, which group we feel we don't relate to. And that's a dangerous world that we're living in. Are you with me? Immigrants are also human beings. Are you with me? Whether they come up through the boats or whether they come from whether they're legal or illegal, they're still human beings. And we should treat them like human beings. When you start treating them like non-human beings, that's the danger of what's happening around the world, whether it's in Israel or Palestine or in Ukraine or in Russia or in Pakistan and India. That's happening now. So therefore, when we start to dehumanize people or groups of people, and the Muslim community is very rapidly becoming dehumanized. Are you with me from that side? Because it can't react. It can't actually, haven't got the influence to and the power to challenge back on some of the things.
Okay, I mean, coming back, as Amjad says, that in times of economic hardship, we've seen this throughout history, that it's the people at the lowest level, the people who are seen as the others, who are targeted. Now, obviously, the Muslim community, I mean, you're a businessman, you run big businesses, still do, and Allah give you even more strength in your business. The Muslim community is at the forefront, not necessarily at the forefront, but is very actively involved in businesses in this country. We have some huge businesses. They generate millions of pounds or billions of pounds in the UK economy. But yet we fail to make a mark to the wider public about the contribution of the Muslim community to the economy of this country.
Iqbal, it's a case of damned if we do and damned if we don't. Every day there are very, very successful Asian businesses out there contributing to the success of this country, paying taxes, paying national insurance, employing people, giving a livelihood to people. And yet some politicians say, oh, they've done it because, they do it because they deal in drugs or they deal with other things, money laundering. They don't recognize the enterprise that our community has. Bradford, where we are today, has a very enterprising community, in particular.
Oh, definitely.
In particular, the youth of Pakistani heritage, the youth of Indian heritage. They play a pivotal role in the development of this city. I'm sad to say that the city has changed tremendously. When I came here in 1960, it was a very diverse, largely white Bradford. Now the inner city has been left behind by the white community. They've taken flight.
It's the white flight.
They've taken white flight and they've gone out to on the outskirts, Saltaire, Shipley, Bingley. But the inner city has been left to the Asians. So the Asians are really carrying this city, and they have a lot of ideas. If you look at food and food technology, if you look at drinks and food, they're the ones that leading the charge and making new ideas develop. Bradford in West Yorkshire is one of the most successful economies of West Yorkshire. If you look at the restaurants, they're full. If you look at the cafes, if you look at the dessert places. I was talking to a taxi driver.
It's the food capital of the UK.
Indeed. I was talking to a taxi driver and he said everywhere, this was a white taxi driver, he said everywhere's dead apart from Bradford. He said I can pick up fare all the time in Bradford. Bradford's alive at night.
I mean, Bradford is one of the youngest cities in the UK now. It has got one of the youngest populations, and obviously it's the city of culture this year, so it's on the world map as well. But the question I raised was, despite everything you've said, we have some amazing businesses here, and when you look at COVID, when COVID happened, there were Muslim businesses in Bradford who went out of their way to support the vulnerable. If you look at my Lahore, for example, they were feeding not just the hospital staff and nurses, they were feeding the homeless people. They still do every week. They supply over 250 meals to the homeless.
We do at Zook every week. We give meals to the homeless every week.
Yeah. So yeah, And yet we are failing to make this known to the wider public, right? So what do we need to do? Maqsood's point about the media is very important. His point about the media not being on our side, we are not having influence on the media. But what is it that we can do?
Iqbal, newspapers have known for a long time, the media has known for a long time, negative sells, positive doesn't sell. So all the things you mentioned and I mentioned, the success, isn't something that you can sell. What you can sell is other things like grooming, like everything negative sells. So they focus on the negatives, and so do unfortunately the politicians. They believe there's mileage in it. When I was an MEP, I saw the rise of the far right in the European Parliament. Viktor Orban in Hungary, Polish parties, they were all turning more and more to the right against the immigrant. And now, sadly, it's happening in the UK as well. It's happened in the United States with Trump. They're all carrying that narrative of anti-immigrant. Because I'm sad to say, the West as a society is failing. The sun is rising from the east. That's where all the new technology, the new businesses, the ideas are going, and we're getting left behind. So we are now looking for scapegoats. We are not doubling down on technology. That's where we should be involved in. Economics, enterprise, and that's not what we're doing. We're looking for scapegoats. And this is where we Asians, and Muslims in particular, can play a huge role. We need to be the successful entrepreneurs. We need to be the technicians of the future. And this will pull the continent of Europe forward. These people don't realize that, these extremists, they don't realize that. But we as a united people,
I mean, that's the point
that.
Maqsood was making earlier about, Muslim and Asian businesses need to step up. But not only just step up and become rich themselves, but to enrich the communities as well, by setting up the structures, the institutions, right? So why is it that the Muslim businesses, unlike the Jewish business community, the Jewish business community contributes millions of pounds to their institutional organizations? We don't have a unified institutional organization. That's the first point. Secondly, we don't have businesses supporting anything that could be established. Maqsood, why do you think that our community has not really realized the importance of what you said earlier, this setting up these institutions to actually fight back and reflect the reality of what the Muslim businesses and the Muslim community is contributing, as Amjad says, millions of pounds, billions of pounds into the economy?
Amjad makes some very good and valid points that, and I agree with him that I think we've got lots of millionaires in the United Kingdom who are Muslims. It's not the shortage of millionaires and money, Iqbal Bhai. So I see in two strands. One is I see we are very successful individually as individual businesses, and we can name people, throughout the United Kingdom who are millionaires. Billionaires. So that is the issue for me. The issue for me is that our culture is that we want to get rich individually for individual gains, but not a collective gain. Whereas any community that looks at individual and contribute towards a collective community gain will always be successful. And what I mean by collective success in businesses, to lead on that, it's like, for example, getting involved in the media. It's the billionaires who get involved in Sky News, BBC News, and the other news through advertisements and others. But they have a condition. They don't just give you the money. Qatar Airways advertising on Sky News doesn't just do it for that. They just do it saying, yeah, we just want promotion. If you look at an example of that, if that was somebody else's doing that, giving lots of money, they have a condition. That you will not abuse our faith, you will not abuse our race, you will not abuse our community. And if you do,
and there's been precedents
and
of
if
that
you
before.
do, and if you do,
Yeah.
we will not fund you.
Yeah.
We won't have it advertised on that. See, there's a different strands, different strategy.
Yeah.
Our business strategy isn't a collective business strategy. Are you with me?
So
in
that
sense
is the
of it?
main failure.
That's
of
the
our
main
community.
failure, in my opinion.
Yeah.
In my
I
humble
think you're
opinion.
right. I agree.
Are you with me?
What would you say?
That's
Iqbal, my friend Maqsood makes a very good point. 20 years ago, in the early 1990s, we set up TARO, Trade Association of Asian Restaurant Owners. At the time, and still, the Asian restaurants were booming, but we were all individually working. The idea was to get a collective, a professional body that had a voice for us with the people that have power, locally and nationally, so we could best represent the industry and take it forward. At that time, and still to this day, we have shortage of skilled chefs, shortage of skilled management at the front of house, and we still have those challenges. And Keir Starmer and others are now saying, oh, halt all immigration. Even though we need care workers, we're saying, no, we can't have them because he realizes it's bad for his votes. Immigration is bad. So that presents an opportunity for us in this country who are settled British people of Asian heritage. We could upskill ourselves and others to gain those jobs, whether it's care homes, whether it's nursing homes, whether it's restaurants, whether it's food production, and it needs skilled people. We need to do that. So we need professional bodies, like Maqsood has rightly said. We need to walk away from being individuals to become collectives, to work together for the good. And then we can even tackle our representation. Then we can even say, we're being maligned when we shouldn't be. We're doing so much for the country, and yet you dare to mention us in a negative way. Our contribution is far greater than the few bad apples in the community. You focus on the bad apples.
Isn't that the case already? Using what you said earlier, that if you look at the contribution of the Muslim business community in this country, right? Just take West Yorkshire, as you said.
Yes.
Right? Is absolutely huge. So that's already happening in your view as well as my view. Okay? So we know that we're doing that already, both in terms of service provision as well as economic sort of contribution. So we're already doing that. But even then I'm saying, why is it that we still have this negative, constant negatives? We have a few bad apples, like every community has. Right? You show me a non-Asian community where there are no bad apples, because there is no such, that doesn't exist. So why is it that despite all the positives that you talked about, that we are still in this situation where we are being sort of maligned all the time, using your word? Now, how do we change that narrative? Do we need an institution, as Maqsood has alluded to, or do we need something else to try and change that narrative? Because we don't have the media on our side, as Maqsood said, and he's quite right. There's no doubt about it. Now, when it comes to the job side of it, you know, I still have this fear that, you know, we have lots of vacancies in your industry, for example. There are hundreds of vacancies in the catering industry.
Yeah.
My area is a bedding making industry. I keep saying to people, we put 70% of the UK public to sleep, and people laugh at me, and they say, why? Because 70% of the beds and mattresses are made in Batley, Dewsbury and surrounding areas.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? Yet every factory that I go to has got vacancies, and people just don't want those manual jobs. So how do we then...
Well, that's selling the idea. The Scandinavian countries, this is what I learned when I was in Europe, the Scandinavian countries have recognized for any country to be successful, it needs 40% of its population employed in vocational work. So working with your hands. They call them guilds, right? Guilds, craftsmen.
We used to have in the old days.
Indeed. We
used to have them in the old days.
We need to look at that again. We need to have these guilds, these professional bodies that teach people skills. Now, my son went to university to do a mathematics degree. With him were other kids that did degrees in law. They came out and they were jobless. They changed and became heating and plumbing engineers. They earn more than my son. So people don't recognize the value of vocational training. We need to do that for a better society and for our kids to have a gainful future.
Right. Okay, I mean, that's a very good point. I mean, if anybody is watching this, and I'm sure this fascinating debate and you want to take part into it, obviously our numbers on the screen, 01274214299. I mean, you know, we'd welcome the opportunity to have a chat with you, and you can share your thoughts and your ideas about why reform has made the progress that it has made, why has reform got to the stage in a very short space of time where they have, and what are the dangers that are lurking for not just the Muslim community but the other communities of color in this country by this constant sort of notion that it's the immigrants, it's them who are causing some of the problems, and the economic situation of this country, as Amjad points out, is partly the reason why the rest of the country is not benefiting from from this country's benefits. Maqsood, I mean, coming back to you, I mean, you have worked in government, you worked with a number of government-related agencies as well. You are now, you've got your Hope Academy looking at how to develop leaders in our community. Now, do you feel that there's a thirst in young people who want to go down that route of leadership to try and sort of become leaders of the community, to shape the future, in best possible way forward?
There are some excellent young people who aspire to become leaders, and I think we've got great potential in black, brown and white young people for the future. In order for them to make them aspiring leaders or future potential leaders, they need to understand history. They need to understand the colonial attitude of our decision makers currently. Because if we continue to not teach them history, not teach them about racism, not teach them how it has an impact on people of color, black and brown in particular, then they won't become leaders. They'll become the leaders as we have now. So this inferiority complex that we've got now, in my opinion, in many areas, are you with me, where they don't challenge, they remain silent, they want to be quiet, that's not helping us. So the future leaders, they do think differently because they haven't got links, too deep links in India or Pakistan or Bangladesh. They were born here, they're bred here, their thinking is slightly different. They do want to know, why is this happening? Why is our political parties very hypocritical, has double standards, and what do we do to make them more and more equal and fair? And that's the debate that young people are having now, that I deal with, that I mentor most of the time. And I think it's important for them to have that discussion and debate if they want to become in that position.
I mean, you're talking to young people all the time, as part of your work. What are their views of our existing politicians? I'm talking about our Muslim politicians who sit in places of influence, as you say,
to be truthful,
positions of power.
They're very disillusioned.
Right.
When they see what's happening around the world and how politics is being used to create hatred and tension on an international level, when they see that the international legislations and rules and laws that have not been abided by certain countries, this hypocrisy is coming up very, very stark. And I think that's the danger for democracy in a sense, because democracy can only work, Iqbal Bhai, and Amjad Bhai knows this, if it's linked to fairness and justice. Otherwise, democracy becomes meaningless. By having the majority voting,
I mean, you've been a member of parliament for 5 years. You sat with people of all different walks of life, all different political colors, from the extreme left to the extreme right. Now that probably Parliament had the most diverse political representation anywhere in the world, right? And like you say, you saw Islamophobia developing in the Eastern Europe. I attended a conference in Vienna about 15 years ago, which is specifically focused on Islamophobia. It was organized by the OSCE, right? As one of the most well-known, recognized European organizations, which has got nearly 42 countries in it, and we could see that happening in that time. Now, in Parliament, sitting in the European Parliament, you got the vibes of what was happening, what was going on. Now, you could see, in 5, 10, 15 years where we're going to go. What thoughts came into your mind when you're sitting there listening to all these diverse people from the left to the right?
I think as a father of 4 and a grandfather to 8 and soon to be 9, shukr, alhamdulillah, I do relate to the young as well. It's important to remember that when our parents came to this country, they put their heads down and they worked. They worked in order to build a future for themselves in this country. And then the next challenge was to get the children educated. And I remember my father pushing me to go to university when I wanted to be in business. And he said, no, I want you to be educated. And when he saw that I had got into university, but my heart was still in business, he then backed off and said, right, if you want to do business, that's fine. But that was the next step, education. Now, a lot of our children are really guided by our parents to seek education that earns them a good living. And I'm not decrying that, I'm not speaking against that. So a lot of them have invested to become doctors, to become scientists, to become anything other than media or politics. And the reason was they didn't see mileage in that, because they saw mileage in having a good job with a good money
good
future.
salary, yeah.
Good salary. And that was what they were seeking. But now, as Maqsood has rightly pointed out, they're disillusioned because they see the inequality in the world, they see the injustice in the world, and they know that perhaps, you know, in order to get justice and fight inequality, they need to be in politics. So some of them really are ripe for that. They should go into politics. There are others that need to be in the media, because the media controls the narrative.
Yeah,
exactly.
And it's driven by people in the media and by politicians who hold their purse strings. So those two areas our people are now waking up to. But I say there's a third way as well, because which is not far from what they're doing already, which is economic success. If you've got business and if you've got money, you can set up lobby groups. And all these media barons and all the politicians, they're at your
Beck and call.
At your mercy, basically, yeah.
Because this is what certain other communities have realized, and they've set up lobby groups which really control the politicians. It's not the other way around. It's them that control. I was told by another very prominent politician in the European Parliament, Amjad, you know, and I was told that there was somebody who really wanted to be a politician, and he kept failing again and again, until somebody turned around to him and said, why are you pursuing this path? You are very, very successful. He was growing chicken. Up to them, chicken were running around, and then they realized that chicken could be factory fed. So you grow chicken. It became a multi-millionaire. So he said, why don't you set up your own think tanks and your own lobby groups, and you can really control the narrative. And I think our community needs to do that as well.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's the point that Maqsood has been making many, many times on this program, right? Lobby groups, there's no doubt about it, because that's how, like I say, other communities have been very successful. And if you look at the United States, politics in the United States, it's the lobby groups that wield the power on the senators and, you know, the Republican Party members, etc., and the Democrat Party members. It's the lobby groups who, in this country, who work quietly in the background, who actually who wield the narrative, the power behind the politicians. And that is something that, you know, many people may not really understand or, you know, be aware of. But we have had a few lobby groups, or tried to set up a few lobby groups, but they've been very quickly discredited, like, you know, MEND, for example. MEND was a very good lobby group. They wanted to do the right thing, but because they didn't have the supporters within the institutions, and sometimes our own Muslim people who worked against them similarly. So what can we do? I mean, going back to your original point, that we have people in positions of power, people in positions of influence, but they are ineffective because they are not supporting some of the causes, and we've seen that with Gaza as well over the last 18 months or so.
Lobby groups are very, I mean, it's one of the key things that I've always endorsed in a sense on it, because lots of other groups do that and very effectively. And good luck to them. Good luck to those groups who actually got very effective lobbying mechanisms. Are you with me? It's not illegal. People do it, and they all do it. You know, those same lobby groups give funding to political parties. Again, not illegal to do it. So it's all within the law. My question is, when you get lobby groups so powerful that influences policy because of the finance that's been given, that's when you see the difference in politics and the media. The Muslim community hasn't really got expertise in that. They're not started doing that yet. Are you with me? So you mentioned MEND. MEND was a lobby group, but it wasn't a lobby group that's influencing financially the political parties.
Yeah, it was a political lobby.
So it comes back to my point that we had a very interesting debate when we were off camera, It's about the finances, who does it. And you can't become a lobby group if you have no finance. You just can't. You can't call yourself a lobby group.
And that's what I'm saying.
in
Is
my
the Muslim
opinion.
community failed to understand the power of the lobby groups, and therefore the Muslim people with the resources, do they now need to wake up and start looking at going down this route like they say others have done? Right? You look at the tobacco industry, they had a massive lobby group. The beer industry.
The rifles in the USA, the rifle industry, the lobby groups.
The NRA is a massive lobby group. They have more power than virtually any other lobby group in the Republican Party. In this country, we know that there are other faith communities who've got their own lobby groups as well.
Absolutely.
And they are funded. So are you now saying that for the Muslim community to get to that level, and Amjad, you alluded to this lobby group in the European Parliament, and wherever you go in this world, where there's a democracy, there's a lobby group, there's no doubt about it, right? Because where there's autocracy, there's no lobby groups. So is this something that now, as a progression of the Muslim community, from our fathers who came here, worked in the factories, sweated their guts out, for the children, as I say, to become educated, then go into business, etc. Is this the next stage that Muslim community now needs to evolve into?
I think, Iqbal, on that subject, there are two things we need to do. We need to recognize that political parties are a collegiate collective. They're not individuals. They stand for something. The Labour Party supposed to be the party of the working classes, supposed to be for the people that don't have a lot of money, in opposition to capitalists. The Conservative Party, the party of the businessman, the capitalist. This is very generic what I'm saying. Right. But therefore, if you become a member of either of those two parties, I could mention other parties as well, you have to subscribe to that overall understanding. To affect,
you have to sign up to them.
You have to sign up to that. Now, in order really to affect policy, you have to be higher up in that echelon and really become a shining star and work your way up. And this is where the community needs to understand that it needs to take a deep breath and not expect too much of our politicians to change things around overnight. They need to get numbers. They need to get numbers of very influential, very talented people to get into the right positions. At the moment, I think our community, it hasn't reached that stage. Secondly, the ordinary public has to realize that they're under constraints. I know we want them to help the people of Gaza. I know they want them to have a conscience, and I subscribe to that view. But I think we need to also recognize that they're under a lot of pressure being part of a political system. Where you can, where you're free, is with the that Maqsood mentioned, that I mentioned, is a lobby group. And you can have an influence, you can be focused. We want to achieve something in justice, etc. And we are for people of Gaza, etc.
Okay, I mean, I'll have to stop you there because we're running out of time, but we've got very little time left. Maqsood, I mean, obviously we've discussed this before about Muslim businesses need to sort of wake up. I mean, how much time have we got to do that?
We haven't got any time.
Got no time. We should have done it a long time ago.
20, 30 years ago.
All right.
We are 30 years behind.
Right.
In my opinion.
If there was a business of people, group of business people watching now, what would you say to them?
I would say to them, please take collective responsibility. Don't just think about your individual business. Alhamdulillah, may Allah give you more and more money.
Ameen.
But collectively is where
stronger.
we are missing. We're stronger collectively. And individually, they'll benefit as well if you collectively.
Inshallah. I hope you've enjoyed the program so far. Some very fascinating insights from two very eminent people. I just said Amjad had the opportunity to serve in the European Parliament, where he came across people from many different countries, had the opportunity to listen and hear their views. Maqsood has worked at the highest place in government, in the Home Office, and he is a political analyst. But they're both given us something to think about, and particularly the Muslim community who are in business, because like other businesses in other communities, they have put their money where their mouth is. If we want to change the narrative that is now being perpetuated by people who want to show hate in our community, then you need to wake up and try and do something about it. I hope you enjoyed the program. Inshallah, I'll see you next week. Take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May Allah be with you and protect everyone. Take care. Inshallah, I'll see you next week.